being able to build a good physique is almost like being a scientist because you have to essentially create a hypothesis, test that hypothesis, and then continuously do it over and over again until you're able to figure out the exact system that works for you so that you can continue to grow your body. And I say this because after 13 years of lifting and being able to build my dream physique, I have had various stages of complications, I guess you can say, whether that's from injuries or just changing of goals or environments, that has made me have to learn how to continuously iterate my training to be able to achieve whatever goal I was chasing at that time. And one of the hardest ones for me to overcome was getting over that skinny fat phase whenever you're not fat and you're not like too skinny, but you have a little bit of a gut and it's just not a very aesthetically pleasing look. Whenever I got this, I remember I knew nothing about calorie intake. I had just finished playing football, and at that time I was 240 pounds, and I had gotten to a point where I was in class, and I remember looking around at the people next to me, and I was like, "Yo, I am way too big to be here." Like, I had stopped playing football, I transferred to a new school just because of different injuries, and I remember sitting in, like, my desk, and I was way bigger than everybody else around me. I wasn't fat necessarily, but I still had muscle, but I was just way too big. So I was like, "You know what? I'm just gonna cut calories." And so I just pretty much starved myself for a little bit because I didn't really understand the science behind it. And I was like, as long as I don't eat a lot of calories, I can't put on weight. That was the thought process that I had. So then I got to a point where I was extremely skinny. I was pretty shredded because I had no weight on me, but I was like 185. I dropped from 240 to 185. And then I told myself, okay, well, let's start putting on more weight. And so I did a dirty bulk and I would just eat mountains of food all the time and my stomach would be messed up. And I just kept going through like these phases of just like going through dirty bulk to unnecessarily cutting way too much calories to where it was unsustainable. And then eventually I got into a point where I was like, yo, A, these groceries at the time I was a broke college kid. I was like, these groceries, every time I try and bulk, are starting to add up and they're getting real pricey. And B, it's just like I should not feel like shit every single time I try and put on muscle. So then I started to pay more attention into how I can bulk and get the same result without either having to stuff my face until I was about to throw up or having to go to a certain point where I put on way too much fat and then I have to drastically cut weight. And so that's whenever I found out about slow bulking, which is essentially whenever you take your baseline of calories and then for me, what I do personally is I add 250 to my baseline of calories. And if you don't know your baseline, all you have to do is take your normal body weight and multiply that by 15. That'll give you a decent understanding. But what I always recommend to individuals is let's say you are in that skinny fat phase and you haven't really started tracking your calories or you're in the very beginning of your fitness journey in general. And let's say you do have a workout program that you're following. If not, I will put my Instagram down below. Just message me on Instagram. I'll send you on over. But let's say you have a workout program you're following and you just need to figure out the nutrition aspect and you're trying to decide if you should cut, bulk, or like what the best plan of action is for you to be able to achieve your goals. And so this is what I always tell people. Whenever you first start working out and you start taking your nutrition seriously, most people don't track. So that's nothing to be upset about. Just realize it's a problem now that you have to overcome. And so whenever you start tracking, you're going to realize either you're way overeating, you're eating just right, or you're way under eating. And this is what I tell people to do. So take the normal food that you eat on a daily basis and track that for like 5 days. Just get an understanding around what your current baseline is. And then take your current body weight, multiply that by 15, understand how many calories you have to either add, subtract, or just if you can just keep it the same for you to put on your ideal weight. Once you do that, you have to understand your protein, which is extremely easy. Just do 1 gram protein per body weight. And then for carbs, I always tell people that I go 30% of the entire calorie intake for carbs, and then the rest of it I fill with fat. So, like, that's the breakdown that I normally do. I'll put a description underneath here, but the main thing I want to talk about is just like how you should like kind of structure the following weeks here. And so, like I was saying in the beginning, you really have to kind of be a scientist with this aspect of it because once you understand your baseline, you should go through like a small recomp phase where it's just like, okay, now I know exactly what I'm supposed to be eating. Let me eat this for 7 days and just see how my body reacts. Because most of the time, if you are at that skinny fat phase, you don't really want to lose weight. You want to be able to put on as much muscle as possible. So what you could do is you could just recomp your body to a position where it's like you're able to turn the weight that you already have from fat into muscle. So that's a possibility. If you're at a point where you're like, okay, well, I know how much I weigh, but I want to be bigger, then what I recommend is for you to do what is called a slow bulk. And so if you do a slow bulk, then what you do is you take your calories and then each week you add up to 250 calories. For me, I just go straight to 250 and I do that for a little bit until I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I like how my body has progressed throughout this week and I just stay there. And then I do a little recomp again, and then I'll just keep kind of switching from there. If you're somebody who is in the very beginning of their workout journey, I would always recommend just slow bulking as long as you possibly can. And that comes from testing again. So, what you do is you take your current calories that you're eating, you make a hypothesis, you say, okay, I had 100 calories this week. Let me check how my body reacts throughout the 7 days every morning right after you go to the bathroom or something, just check how much you weigh and then say, okay, this is what my body has looked like. Like, do I look like I'm putting on more fat or like how much weight have I gained? Like I always say, like if you gain like 0.5 pounds per week, then you're good. If you're above that, then you have to adjust and maybe you can cut down calories. Or if you're not even close to that, then you can add some calories. And like again, this is all just like using the scientific method that we all learned when we were kids. You take your baseline, you create a hypothesis, you test the hypothesis, you review the test, and then you make a conclusion based on it and then iterate like from there. And so that's what you're doing throughout this entire journey. And yes, you can have set numbers, but your body changes. Your body is different. And the only way for you to find exactly what works for you is to test. And then once you find what works for you, then you stick with that. And if that's continuing to bulk, then keep that calorie mark that you're at and just continuously add as you go along. And then just test yourself and continuously make changes. And the last thing that I'll say on this is like a lot of people say that they do not have enough time to be able to track calories. And quite frankly, I never track calories. I track calories at one point in time, and that's whenever I make my initial test. And then if I'm at a point where I'm just in a recomp, then I just eat the same thing every day because I've realized that I don't eat food for enjoyment. I literally eat food to be able to fuel my body to be able to perform the best that it possibly can at any situation. So the way I eat is whenever I first upgrade whatever my calorie intake is, I track it for maybe 2 to 3 days. And then I'm like, okay, I know how much I'm supposed to eat. And I just eat that every day. And that's it. And, like, after you do it for a while, you get a good understanding around, like, protein intake and different things like that, and so whenever you do that, like, you can switch up the, like, where you're getting your food from and just have, like, a general understanding saying, like, "Hey, this is still the same amount of food," but, like, that still comes from testing, and I'm telling you, like, if you don't want to track food because to me, like, pulling on a scale and tracking everything just is kind of annoying, I literally eat the same thing every day, and it works for me perfectly. I've been able to build my dream physique time and time again and keep it for a very long time, and I don't track my food at all. It would help, I know it would, but it's not necessary, right? Like, within the gym, I track because you should be progressive overloading at all times. Whenever I'm outside of the gym, to me, unless I'm, like, meal prepping, which I don't really do too much, I normally just say, like, "Okay, this is what I have to eat," and I just eat it every day, it's like me pulling out a scale, it just takes too much time. And so I'm just saying what I do and what works for me. If you are somebody who can't stick to eating the same thing, or you need to hold yourself responsible by like pulling out a scale and saying, I need to eat exactly this much, then like that's on you. And what I'll do is I'll put down in the comment section, it'll just be a breakdown around how much calories you should eat. So all you have to do is download it and then you can just copy it. But like again, once you get a decent baseline around like what you're doing, then all you have to do is just repeat it.